ẹ kú dédé àsìkò yìí ẹ sì káàbọ̀ sórí ìkànnì Wo TV náà tàbí tá a máa ń gbé wá fún yín lọ́lọ́kan ọ̀jọ̀kan èní èyí ẹ ti wá mọ̀ ìgbé bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ti fojú kàn mí lórí ìkànnì Wo TV àrà ọ̀tún àrà ọ̀tọ̀ òun náà lòun tá a tún gbé dé kí wá lóhun àrà kí ló wọ ọ̀tún ọ̀hún ẹ má gbọ́ lẹ́nu mi o ẹ jẹ́ ká ṣe báyìí ẹ jẹ́ ká jọ wọ yàrá lọ ká lọ wo fọ́nrán yìí níbi tí àlàyé wà lẹ́kùnrẹ́rẹ́ ohun tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ gbọ́ àti tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ rí àti gbogbo ìtẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ń pátá òun ló ti wà ní sẹpẹ́ ó ti yá ẹ jẹ́ àjọlọ́gbọ́n.
Paragraphs above, in my view, are too generic, vague, lacking in any particulars, and they are not tied specifically to any particular polling unit or any particular number of people who are alleged to be disenfranchised. The fact that a party can file further particulars or deny in a reply the affirmations in the pleading must not be general, must be specific as to facts. It is settled law that a petitioner's obligation to plead particulars of fraud or falsification without which the allegation is a non-starter. I have nothing to add to this statement of law as advanced above, and I adopt it as my unquote. Indeed, on the provision of paragraph 17 sub 1 of the first schedule to the Electoral Act relating to further particulars, the Apex Court held in PDP versus INEC, Supra, that, and I quote, an application for an order for further particulars is merely a shield in the hand of a party who so desires, and not a sword to be used by a party whose pleading is grossly inadequate, insufficient, and devoid of necessary particulars as the appellant's position was in the instant case, unquote. A sober consideration of the decisions of the Supreme Court in relation to the requirements of pleadings in paragraphs 4 sub 1 sub d of the first schedule to the Electoral Act 2022, on the one hand, and the decisions of the Supreme Court on the provision of paragraph 17 sub 1 and sub 2 of the first schedule, the Electoral Act 2022 relating to further particulars on the other hand, shows that whilst in cases such as Abubakar versus Erdogan, Ombugadu versus Sule, the Supreme Court had held that a respondent who complains of vagueness of affirmations in an election petition should avail himself of the provision of paragraph 17 sub 1, first schedule to the Electoral Act, seek for further particulars or the direction of the tribunal or court. The decisions of the Apex Court, especially in PDP, INEC, Belgore and Ahmed, have specifically held that where affirmations in the petition are grossly imprecise, generic, such affirmations will be incompetent, liable to be struck out. So also on this Ipiazu. It is therefore clear that the state of the law, as could be deduced from the various decisions of the Apex Court, is that the provision for further particulars, as stated in paragraph 17.1, first schedule to the Electoral Act 2022, will only come into play where the petition itself contains material or necessary particulars. In other words, paragraph 17 sub 1 of the first schedule to the Electoral Act 2022 does not bar a respondent from applying under paragraph 4 sub 7 of the first schedule to strike out affirmations in the petition which are grossly inadequate, insufficient, devoid of material or necessary particulars. This is because operational words in paragraph 17 sub 1 is further particulars, and this means there must be some material particulars already pleaded in the petition before further particulars can be sought by the respondent. As born from the Apex Court decision in Belgore and Ahmed, PDP, INEC, and Ipiazu and OT, the law is clearly settled that specifying the particulars of polling units or places where irregularities are alleged to have occurred are material particulars in an election petition. Affirmations in an election petition which allege irregularities or malpractices but fail to specify the polling units or places where the irregularities or malpractices occurred are bereft of material particulars, and such affirmations are incompetent and liable to be struck. As specifically stated in PDP and INEC, the petitioner who has failed to state such material particulars cannot invoke the provision relating to further particulars as a sword against the respondent in order to cure the incompetence of such affirmation. With respect, it is a misconceived argument on the part of the senior counsel for the petitioners to state that the latter decision of the Apex Court in Ombugadu and Sule Supra, which relates to further particulars under paragraph 17.1 of the first schedule, has departed the specific decisions of the Apex Court in Belgore Ahmed, PDP, INEC, Ipiazu and Oti, and several others, on the mandatory requirements for stating material facts as provided in paragraph 4.1, first schedule to the Electoral Act. Contrary to the contention of the petitioners, the decision of the Supreme Court in Ombugadu and Sule Supra has merely reiterated the legal position relating to further particulars as provided in paragraph 17 sub 1, first schedule to the Electoral Act 2020. It has not departed from the above specific decisions of the Apex Court on the materiality of specifying in an election petition polling units or places where irregularities and malpractices are alleged to have occurred. Now, a look at the arguments in the petitioner's petition shows that the petitioners have only alleged various irregularities and malpractices, but failed to specify the particular polling units or specific places where the alleged irregularities and malpractices have occurred. For instance, in paragraph 9 of the petition, where the petitioners averred that, and I quote, in appropriate cases, these agents raised complaints about anomalies where they occurred and reported such complaints to designated officers of the second respondent and the first respondent, unquote. Petitioners failed to specify the anomalies, the places where the anomalies occurred, the agents who complained, and the designated officers of the second petitioner and the first respondent to whom the complaints were made. In paragraph 60 and 61 of the petition, where the petitioners allege that the first respondent, and I quote, suppressed the actual scores obtained by the petitioners by deliberately uploading blurred from EC8As on the IRF in 18,088 polling units. The petitioners did not specify the polling units, but only stated that they will rely on spreadsheets containing the polling units codes and details of the 18,088 polling units, as well as the authentic results in the said polling units. Paragraph 66 and 67, where the petitioners allege that the first respondent embarked on, and I quote, massive misrepresentation and manipulation by uploading fictitious results in polling units where there were no elections, unquote. They did not specify the polling units where they allege there were no elections. Incorrect results that were uploaded and which are the correct results. Again, in paragraph 68 to 71, where the petitioners allege that the scores obtained by them were, and I quote, unlawfully reduced and added by the first respondent to the scores of the second respondent, unquote. They failed to state their scores that were reduced and added that of the second respondent by the first respondent, and the figures that shows that the first petitioners won the election. In paragraph 72, 73, 76 to 78, where the petitioners allege overvoting, they merely stated that they will, and I quote, rely on the forensic reports of the election materials showing that the votes cast in the polling units in Ekiti State, Oyo State, Ondo State, Taraba State, Osun State, Kano State, Yobe, and Niger States exceeded the number of votes accredited on the beavers in those states. Petitioners failed to specify the polling units in those states where the overvoting occurred, the number of votes affected, the margin of lead, which they claim that the voters who ought to legitimately vote in those polling units. In paragraph 73 of the petition, petitioners only stated that they will, and I quote, show that in the computation and declaration of the results of the election, based on uploaded results, the votes recorded for the second respondent did not comply with the legitimate process of computation of the result and disfavored the petitioners, unquote. In Rivers, Lagos, Taraba, Benue, Adamawa, Imo, Bauchi, Borno, Kaduna, and Plateau, and other states of the Federation. Petitioners neither specified the uploaded results nor the votes illegally recorded by the second respondents and how they were disfavored. Paragraph 83 of the petition, where the petitioners claim that the first respondents scored the majority of lawful votes cast at the election, they did not state the majority of lawful votes they claim to have scored, especially as elections and the determination of who won is about figures. In paragraph 99 of the petition, where the petitioners say they will rely on Form EC8As to establish that substantial votes were unlawfully credited to the second respondent, they failed to state the figures of the unlawful votes credited to the second respondent. In the petition, petitioners merely made generic allegations of various irregularities and malpractices against the respondents without specifying the polling units, collation centers, or specific places where the alleged irregularities and malpractices occurred. Rather, petitioners only stated that they will rely on spreadsheets, inspection reports, and forensic/expert analysis, which they say they have incorporated in the petition by reference. But none of the spreadsheets, inspection report, and forensic/expert analysis was attached and served along with the petition on the respondent. Rather, they were only listed as items 35 and 36 in the list of documents to be relied upon by the petitioners. It is only in paragraph 62 and 64 of the petition, where the petitioners allege that the first respondents suppressed the lawful votes of the petitioners and inflated the votes of the second and fourth respondents in Rivers and Benue states. That the petitioners gave figures of the votes, where the petitioners gave figures of the votes suppressed for the petitioners and those inflated for the second and fourth respondents, and also stated that they claim to be the actual figures scored, what they claim to be the actual figures scored by them and by the second and fourth respondents. But all other paragraphs of the petition where irregularities and malpractices were alleged are bereft of any material details of the polling units or places where they were alleged to have taken place, or the figures of votes alleged to have been suppressed, inflated, or inflated. It is also pertinent to observe that in paragraph 79 of the petition, where the petitioners allege corrupt practices, they merely stated that they are repeating their pleadings in support of the grounds of non-compliance to be in support of their allegations of corrupt practices. It should be noted, however, that not every ground of non-compliance will amount to corrupt practice. In fact, the standard of proof of non-compliance differs from that of corrupt practices.